Hey, this is Zero doing Race Week here at ReviewZoneHD, and the first review that we're doing is Need for Speed Shift. Now, the Need for Speed series has had several bumps in the road, pun intended, along its long series of games, and while I've played over half of them, I can't really say I've enjoyed all of them. This is the 13th installment in the series, and it was released in September of 2009. The game received pretty good reviews when it first released, even though it had some serious issues going on that weren't really addressed very well in a lot of the reviews. There have been a few patches that have corrected some of these issues, but there's a few problems that still remain that were never resolved. The fun thing about reviewing a game years after its release is I get to compare it to more recent titles to see how it stacks up to today's market of games. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the review. There's well over 60 cars to choose from, and every one of them has enough detail inside and out to please just about anybody that demands the cars to look exactly as they do in real life. I owned a 350Z for a couple years, and I can confirm the interior on this game is exactly what I saw in my own car, down to the gauges. No complaints whatsoever with the amount of detail in the cars. The customization options were also really well done, from picking different types of paint such as glossy metallic candy and more to selecting decals and applying them however you see fit. The game also features a very basic photo mode if you want to snap pictures out on the track. There's a pretty good sense of speed, as you can tell a pretty huge difference when you're flying down the track at 200 miles per hour compared to 100, and the blurred jolt you receive when your car slams into something will certainly grab your attention. The game ran pretty smooth, and I didn't notice any frame rate or screen tearing as I played. There's an issue in the game in which the sound cuts out for a split second when you hit bumps in the road when playing in certain camera viewpoints, and it's a shame this wasn't fixed because it really catches your attention as you play. As far as the sound effects, such as the car's engine and tires screeching, these were all spot on and sound phenomenal, especially in surround sound. The long list of songs for the soundtrack were mostly laid back and tried to stay in the background. It's not really pulse-pounding music, but it did remind you it was there on occasion. This is one of the very few games on the PS3 that I actually hold a Platinum trophy on, and it's certainly not an easy or quick task to obtain a Platinum on here. The point of me sharing that with you is that I was enjoying my time with this game so much that I did decide to go after it, and it really was a rewarding experience once I finally earned it, as this game is somewhat challenging if you're attempting to go after the trophies and the badges. It does offer some assistance with the race lines found on the tracks, which are especially helpful if you enjoy driving inside the car opposed to the outside viewpoints. There's also so many tracks found in this game that unless you plan on really sinking a ton of time memorizing the tracks, having the lines turned on will help you with those sneaky turns that pop up at the top of the hills. Mastering the corners for some tracks almost require that these lines be turned on so that you can actually see where you need to be. I've read numerous complaints from people that stated they didn't like how the cars handle on this game, which I have to completely disagree with. I really enjoyed the handling on here. I didn't have any issues with that, but I can tell you from first-hand experience after dropping over 100 hours into this game, any adjustments that you make in your tuning of your car have a huge impact on how it handles. So if you don't know what you're doing, it can wreck your car before you ever get it to the starting line. When the game first released, there were a lot of issues that luckily did get resolved. One specific problem that really became an issue for me personally was the windshield. When the game first came out, if you were driving with the camera inside the car and you bumped anything, your windshield would get a large crack. If you bumped something else, it would get even larger, and usually after the first lap or two you couldn't hardly see anything through it, which forced you to switch to the outside camera view. Luckily this was fixed in a patch, as now you really have to demolish your car for that to take place. They also corrected several minor issues, but a few were left unresolved. Your leaderboard times occasionally will vanish for no reason. There were a couple tracks I raced multiple times because my times just kept disappearing, which mattered back then because when I was competing against friends for the fastest times, it kind of was annoying to have to keep doing the same tracks. Speaking of which, the leaderboards were wiped clean at some point as none of my friends were listed on any of the leaderboards, which was a bit disappointing. People also quickly found a way to hack the leaderboards when the game first came out, an issue that I'm not really sure if it ever got resolved because I didn't do any research on that. But back on topic, looking past the minor flaws of this title, this is actually one of my favorite racing games ever made. I spent more time racing on this game than I have any other game with the exception of maybe Mario Kart on Super Nintendo. The game can be picked up pretty cheap, and it's one I'd highly recommend if you're looking for a solid racer to get into. The online multiplayer still works, and I was able to find a couple matches just last night without any problems. I will be checking out Shift 2 for the first time later this week, so stay tuned for that review. This is Zero at ReviewZoneHD, and thanks for stopping by.